Welcome to Mysterious Goings On, the podcast about creativity, writing, and mystery. Every week, we talk about all kinds of great fiction and meet the people who write it. We also feature explorations about creativity in all walks of life. Your host, Alex Greenwood, will join you right after this.
Welcome back to the big show. I am so thrilled to be back in the saddle again, so to speak, of interviewing authors again. You know, we took about a year off with maybe a couple interviews in there, but after a little personal loss, and I just needed to regroup and wasn't sure, and it wasn't fair to the people I was interviewing if I, just wasn't feeling it or wasn't there. And I'll tell you what, I was not worried, but thought, now that I'm kind of back doing that, people might not be interested in speaking with me again. They may have moved on. They may have found greener pastures, more interesting people to speak with. Not so, because guess who's back after joining us in 2021? Matty Dalrymple. She's back. She first joined us on MGO back then, and she talked to us about building real place into fiction, the Maine coastline or Sedona Rock that grounds her novels. Now she's back with a story from her own writing desk, and it's so interesting what she's done. This is really, really creative and smart. She serialized her 7th Engineer novel on Substack, 1 chapter a day for 6 weeks. And she paid subscribers reading the book so that they could see it. They could see it take shape in real time. She could make her changes. She could basically beta this thing with these folks, right? And it's so exciting because we're going to get into the mechanics of that today and how far ahead has she stayed, what readers changed by commenting, what she do differently, and why she's already, I think, planning to do it again. Again, Matty Dalrymple, author of the Lizzie Ballard thrillers and the Anne Kinnear suspense novels and suspense shorts. She's a member of International Thriller Writers and Sisters in Crime. She's also a podcaster, very respected podcaster. She writes, she speaks, she consults on the writing craft as an indie author, and she's a partner member of the Alliance of Independent Authors. And I'm kind of proud to say it, and maybe I'll just take a liberty here and say I think she's becoming one of my friends, and I'm so glad to welcome her back. Matty Dalrymple, good to see you again right here on Mysterious Goings On.
It is great to see you. And I am both flattered to be one of the first authors back when you're resuming interviews, but also I've been loving your solo stuff too. So it's all good. You have both of those styles pinned down.
Oh, thank you. And, I tease people on those a little bit, saying I know you're all kind of really ready for me to interview people again, but it's very nice to hear you say that, and thank you. I do appreciate it, Matty. And honestly, I respect you so much. It's really great to hear that from you. So thanks again, and thanks for being back here. You've been, as I alluded to in the intro, you're very busy. Of course, you always are. It's kind of interesting. I flatter myself by saying I really view you and I as peers in the sense that we both don't just write. We also advocate for the indie community, first of all,
Yep.
Whether via podcasts or speaking publicly or webinars or whatever. And you're now plowing into Substack like I did. But as I said, of course, as usual, you're ahead of me. You have a smarter idea. First of all, if we could, the name of this book, I've got to just say, is I love this name. I'm going to let you tell us about the book and tell us a little bit about, if you would, the journey to going from maybe a traditional beta setup to Substack.
Yeah. Well, I'll sort of start out with the approach to serialization, and then I'll talk about the title since that's sort of part of the logistics of it. But I have always been intrigued by the idea of serials from afar. And so I interviewed people about doing serials on my podcast and, just chatted with other authors. But the people I always encountered, either talking to in person or hearing about, were the people who were writing as they went. And that I found that terrifying. Like the idea of starting into a story, putting out novels as you're writing them as a plotter, that was just anathema to me. And I thought, what happens if you get to chapter 10 and you suddenly realize that some character you introduced in chapter 3 is useless to the story? You can't do anything because now that's in the hands of readers. And of course, there are ways around that. I mean, a lot of times the people who are publishing that way are not committing that an eventual book they publish is going to be exactly as it was serialized when they're doing it live. But still, the idea didn't appeal to me until I got to the point where I was finishing my 7th Ann Kinnear novel. And it is the first novel that I decided after, 12 novels. The combination of having written 12 novels and having developed a very extensive and informed beta reader community, I decided this was going to be the first book where I didn't pay separately for a professional edit. So I went to my trusted first reader, Lisa Reagan, who is a very successful crime fiction author. She's the author of, I think now, 25 Detective Josie Quinn police procedurals with Hachette. And so she has always been very generous in beta reading my work, and she is perfect because she's very good at the big picture. First of all, she's always very complimentary, which is nice, and she's also very good at big picture things like, I wasn't quite buying such and such. And as fellow author, she's also very good at saying, and an easy way of fixing that would be, like she never says rip and tear the whole thing.
Right.
So I got Lisa's input. I incorporated it into the story, and I thought I still want another level of eyes on this before I put it out in the world as a real thing. And at that time, I had started using Substack for a new platform I was spinning up called From Expertise to Authority. And I thought, oh, this would be a fun way to use the platform, which I was really enjoying because it's sort of like the thinking person's social media.
Right.
The longer content, more thoughtful interactions. And so that is really where the idea of serializing Ann Kinnear book 7 chapter by chapter a day for 6 weeks, as you say, came about.
You said, you're not a stranger to having other writers and just general lovers of the genre work with you on the book. But if people don't really understand Substack, though, it's an interesting medium. It's kind of just one of a better term. It's basically your newsletter, your blog, a little bit of social, potentially audiovisual if you want to do that as well, all rolled into one. Yeah. And people there choose to follow you. There's no algorithm serving you up. If they follow you, they get an email when you post something, they get notifications, all these things. And I've been using it now for 2 years, 9 months, something like that. And I have a modest following, but I haven't really tried to do much more than just build content there and explore it and have fun with it. Although I'm getting ready to ramp up because people are starting to lap me, and I'm like, these are people who heard about it from me and they're lapping me, and I'm very competitive. Hey, look, I'll admit it. I am who I am. I'm a flawed person. Anyway, as I said once, I'm a very small man once you get to know me. No, I'm just kidding. But you did that. And so tell us the mechanics of it, if you would. So was this like anybody who follows you got this, or did they have to sign up for it and pay for it? Or how does that work?
Well, I'm going to start from the point of view of me setting it up. And I still feel like there are things I'm still discovering about Substack that I wish I had known to begin with. And I'll mention one of them. But basically, I wanted to make the story available to whoever was interested. The other benefit is they were going to be paying me to be along for the ride, as opposed to me paying on a platform like NetGalley or something like that.
Right.
So I knew I wanted to publish 1 chapter a day because, the chapters are shorter. My chapters, there are some very short chapters that are like 500 words, but they're rarely longer than 3,000 words. So it's not a huge time commitment to ask people to take a look at them every day. It's a mystery thriller, so it's intended to be more propulsive. It's not the kind of thing where I need people to like sit with the chapter for a week and think about it. No, I want them to want to go on to the next one. So the decision to go daily was a very easy decision to make right off the bat. I decided I wanted to put a certain number out for anyone to read, so free access for the first 7 chapters. I thought a week was good, but also conveniently, Chapter 7 is a sort of cliffhanger chapter where it's a scene where an unnamed watcher is observing the protagonist. The protagonist obviously doesn't know he's there. And so that was great. I'm hoping people say like, oh, I wonder who he is. I want to keep reading. And so then the subsequent chapters well, I preceded all this with a week of lead up with like, here's why I'm doing this, and here's what it is, and here's how it's going to work. And then for all the subsequent chapters, they were paid, but I provided a little bit of reading material at the beginning. Like you can put a paywall on a Substack article wherever you want. So I would give people a couple of paragraphs and then I would put the paywall in, again, hoping they would be intrigued enough to pay for a subscription. I ran through all the chapters and then there was about a week of, well, I anticipated there was going to be about a week of wrap up at the end. And then I would close it down. And in my communications with the readers, I'd been very clear that no one would pay for more than 2 billing cycles for this serialization.
Right.
So I was keeping a very close eye on when was the first person who had subscribed and when did I have to close it to make sure that it didn't go beyond the 2 billing cycles. But then as the serial was wrapping up, I started getting more conversations like podcast interviews and things like that about the experience. And I didn't want people to go to Substack and find that that serial was now closed.
Yeah.
So I was doing some sort of kludgy workarounds to make sure that, in fact, nobody paid more than the committed amount. And I think that the trickiest part, the reason I really liked Substack for this, as opposed to something like Patreon, I also have a presence on Patreon, but I don't, as a supporter of Patreon, on Patreon, I don't find the content easy to get to.
Yeah.
I'm always like having to switch from like my creator account to my supporter account and poke around in there. I can never find anything.
Yep.
And also just the reading experience isn't particularly pleasant. So Substack is much, much nicer in that way. As you already mentioned, you have that discoverability benefit that you generally don't have on a platform like Patreon. But Substack, because as you also said, came about more as like a blog newsletter replacement.
Yeah.
Doesn't have as sophisticated like supporter benefit and tier management as Patreon does. So one issue I discovered is that Substack really just doesn't do as good a job as a platform like Patreon about saying, if you're free, you get this. If you pay this much, you get this. If you're at this level, you get this. And the other thing it wasn't as good at is it assumes everyone's publishing ongoing content. And so it requires you to provide an annual option, which, you know, for most people are saying, you know, it's $10 a month or $100 for the year, whatever that might be. It's intended to represent a discount. But since my thing wasn't going to last more than 2 months, I had to do some kludgy stuff to sort of make that more of a premium tier than a discount tier.
Could you, okay. And I know we're getting in the weeds here, but that's okay. Because I assume a lot of people listening are like, how did she do this? So could you have just offered okay, I'm just on the fly here. Could you have offered, let's say $10 is what you wanted to charge for people to be a beta on this, right? Right. Let's just say 10, right? Total is what you wanted to charge. Let's just assume that's it. Just so
Okay.
Could you have just reduced all, you're going to be saying, are you nuts? But could you have just reduced all subscribers for like the subscriptions to $10 and they get the whole thing? Anything you put out there that was paywalled for a certain amount of time, like a month or 45 days, whatever it was to go through this, they would get the bonus of everything else. But I guess in a way, though, you'd be like, you're giving away the whole store when you don't want to do that. If you do that, is my point. Instead of having to track everybody, is my point.
Yeah, the way I arranged it, and I'm mainly going to arrange it the same way the next time, is that I also have to pull up my cheat sheet to make sure I say this correctly. So it was 2 months for $10 a month in this case.
Okay.
And so I committed to everybody they would never pay more than $20. If they paid the one installment of $10, they would get the chapters while they were subscribed.
Okay.
And they would lose access to the chapters if they dropped off after a month. And if they subscribed early enough so that they were with me for 2 months, then they got some extra perks like anybody who subscribed got the ebook when it was completed, but you got a mention on the supporter page if you supported through the 2 months. So I did kind of want to set it up so that there was incentive to join early and stay through it. And I think that there are a lot of, I just had a conversation with Gala Russ. It was very interesting. We had conversations at the beginning and end of the serialization. And the first part I talked about what my plans were. And then the second part I talked about how things had panned out. And she and I spent a lot of time talking about ways to accommodate this weird, need to do an annual plan.
Yeah.
But I think that through all of it, it's balancing what's easiest for the reader and what's easiest for me.
Yeah.
And we came up with some ideas that would probably be less work on my part, would be more confusing for the readers. And so I kind of, because I wasn't managing an enormous, thousands of subscribers, I really wanted to focus on what was going to be best for them, because I thought that would, in fact, pay me back in the end. And what I ended up doing is that when I got to this point where I realized I was just about to close the serialization based on my original plan, but then I started talking about it with people, what I did is I went and I comped everyone who had been supporting me up to that point for lifetime access. So no matter, I could leave the thing open forever and I could still be getting a trickle of new subscribers. They might hear this podcast in a year and think, oh,
Right.
that sounds interesting. I want to see what that's like. They could go subscribe, but the people who have already subscribed, I never have to worry about them getting overcharged. The only thing I have to do is every time, if in a year a new person subscribes, I need to make sure I'm aware of that so that I'm doing the same thing for them. I'm comping them when they get through their 2 months. So I may, as these things build up, it might become, unmanageable, and I might have to think of another way of handling it, or just, close them off at some point.
Well, there's quirks of the platform, right? And but I think you've rather masterfully navigated that for this project, and I know you'll just continue to improve it. But it's funny, you talk about Patreon. They asked me I did this writers group talk that I did a couple of weeks ago, and they were asking me what I thought about Patreon versus Substack, and I said basically, yeah. I just find the user experience to be not great, and I think also some people. There's a mild backlash. Some people don't care for Patreon out there who don't want to do it. Maybe they got burned. Maybe I don't know. I hadn't done a survey on it, but I'm an OG. I did for my third book. I wanted to do like a kind of a special print run of it, and I did Kickstarter back in the day. I've done pieces on this. I don't know. I've written about it. I did a little silly book-sized ebook about it, and it's now retired. But because I don't think Kickstarter's that. All that for publishing these days. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, I did that and I got fully funded, but it was an interesting experience. And I did like the means of fulfillment and the perks you can give and all that stuff, but I don't think I'd ever do it again. I don't think I would at all.
I did think of Substack as also an alternative to Kickstarter, because I've also interviewed a bunch of people about Kickstarter. It is still a huge thing in the author community. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
What? Why? What bothers you about it? I'm dying to know.
First of all, whenever I thought about it, I always found it very difficult to come up with what I felt were compelling benefits. And I felt as if the benefits had to be, theoretically, I should feel the same way about coming up with supporter benefits for Substack, but somehow the stakes felt lower. Like I felt as if people, when they sign up for Kickstarter, they've had this expectation set that it's like, gold foil print editions and, all these kinds of things. And that was starting to feel uncomfortable. But I also just think it's this, like the emotional risk of, do people love me enough to actually back my campaign?
Well, yes.
And when I started thinking about Substack, it took that away, because when I think about Kickstarter, I think you either make it or you fail. You either fund or you don't fund.
Right.
And with Substack, my feeling was, if nobody ever read it, if nobody subscribed, if it was crickets, I was still going to feel like I would get something out of it, because I would spend 6 weeks looking at a book that I'd been working on for a year, one chapter a day.
Yeah.
And I felt that just that discipline would make it worthwhile. And when the bar is set so low, like, you can't help but have it be a big success.
I love the way you think. let me tell you, if I could, you know what I did? I write about this and I talk about how stupid I was. I'm very, as you can tell, I'm very easy on myself. How stupid I was to launch this over like July 4th weekend, thinking, well, people won't be at work. They'll have nothing to do but troll the internet and fund Kickstarters. Figured out pretty quickly. Most people do this stuff at work, first of all, and they don't want to spend their holiday looking around with Kickstarter. Yeah. But the thing is, what I did for giveaways, and I tell you, this is what put me over the top because I charge the most for naming characters after people.
That is fun.
It's fun. It's a little bit of a thing. People are like, oh, okay, yeah. But what's interesting is like, I actually created characters that went from that third book all the way to the end of the 8-book series, and they got bonuses from that. I'm like, you see, look at that. And I even said jokingly, I said, I'll even make you the absolute villain. I will make you just a horrible person. Nobody took me up on that. No, one guy bought it for his daughter, who at the time was a teenager. He's like, please don't make her a villain, and please don't make her be, And I was like, yeah, I got it, no problem. But I get that, and I just think the elegance and simplicity of the Substack answer you came up with is fantastic. And let me ask you, if I could, talk to me, if you would. How did you get comments? Did you just say comment below each chapter if you have beta type comments, or did you have them DM you, or how did you do that?
I had comments right on the posts. The comments were only for paid subscribers. And I intentionally wanted to do that because I was hoping to encourage conversation among the supporters. Ooh. That never really panned out to the extent I had hoped. There was some conversation, mainly people say, I agree with what Jane said. But I'm hoping over time to find ways to do that more, because I think it would be fun to build more of a community there.
Yeah.
And I felt confident enough in the work and in the platform that I didn't expect that I was going to be getting like comments that I wouldn't want anyone else to see.
Right.
And I think that's important to think about, that, maybe it's because now this is my 12th novel or whatever, but, I've seen enough reviews. I kind of know what people are going to say. I don't have angst about that like I think some people do. And I knew that if push came to shove and somebody was being really unprofessional or really unkind, I could just block them and refund their money.
Yeah.
So, and that didn't happen at all. Everybody who participated was lovely. But I did want that more community conversation gestalt going on.
Yeah. I love this. You're not only getting subscribers who more than likely will hang around after this, but you're not only getting valuable feedback on your work, but you're also creating community around your writing. I know you think I'm just pouring syrup on you, but this is brilliant. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah,
wow.
I was having lots of fun with it.
Well, it's evident. And that kind of gets back to the big picture, which I want to get to in a little bit, but we're going to get to that. But I want to talk to you more about that, having fun with writing, the sense of community that you create around your work, and then the way you go out and you're like an evangelist for indie writers in so many ways. I want to talk about that. But first, let's talk about this book itself. Tell us about the book itself, if you would, please.
So the book is set on a cruise ship. I discovered cruising a couple of years ago, and I just thought that that a cruise ship would be a fantastic place to set a story. If anybody reads the book, it's called The Meridian Blue, the Meridian Cruise Line. It's the Meridian Blue, and it's based on the Celebrity Silhouette, which I took a cruise on in January this year. And in fact, this year was a big cruise. I went on 2 cruises this year, both on Celebrity, both on similar ships. So if people know the Celebrity ships, they can say like, oh, that's the Passport Bar. Oh, that's the Ensemble's Lounge. But I wanted to, what I really wanted to do was have Anne Kinnear, who's the protagonist. Anne has the ability to communicate with the dead. And she has a business based on this that's run by her brother, where basically, the expectation is she's going to like go to a house that someone's thinking of buying to see if it's haunted, or, helping people contact their dead relatives. But she is invited on the on the cruise by a client who wants to communicate with his father, who passed away on a previous cruise on that ship. But he wants her to go disguised as his actual fiance. In fact, the claim is that the fiance is the one who has suggested that Anne do this. And so I wanted that to happen so much, and I had to do a lot of work to make that a plausible scenario. I kept going through and saying, "Oh man, no, there has to be like some other driving force that would lock Anne into having to go on the cruise disguised as someone else." I finally did it. I finally felt I got a plausible reason for Anne to do that. And so it is Anne looking for the father and eventually contacting the father, and then secrets are uncovered as a result of Anne's contact.
And this is, tell me again, this is number 7 in the series? Which one is it?
Yeah.
7.
Yep.
I mean, having done 8 on mine and probably retired it, it says a lot that you continue to go, and that's what I love about what you're doing, is you continue to find rich veins to uncover here. And you and I think, have something else in common too, is that it just seems like so many places that my character goes were like where I went on vacation.
Yes, exactly. It's nice to have it. In fact, skipping ahead a little bit, I am now working on my 6th Lizzie Ballard thriller, and 2 of those books were set in Sedona, Arizona, one of my 2 favorite places to vacation in the U.S., the other one being Mount Desert Island, Maine, which is where 2 of my Anne Kinnear books are set. And at the end of book 6, how can I say this so it's not an entire spoiler? A character might return to Sedona, but it would be quite implausible for the character to actually being returning to Sedona. So I thought, where else can he go? Because he likes the Sedona vibe. So I thought, Taos, New Mexico, that's a place I always hear about. That seems like a place that would appeal to this character. I know, I better go to Taos, New Mexico and check it out.
That makes sense. You have to.
Absolutely.
You got to do. I had not cruised until about 4 years ago. And I'm just going to say it. I was like, I don't know if that's for me. I don't know. You hear things, and there's there are sensational things out there about bad cruises, things like that. But I just didn't know if the vibe was right. And my in-laws, to celebrate everybody getting through COVID and their only granddaughter and all that. So we went on an Alaskan cruise on Royal Caribbean. And it was kind of one of their mid-sized ships, Matty, I fell in love with cruising because, one, I do love boats. I love ships. But I'll never forget, as long as I live, going through, there's this misty kind of strait you have to go through to get to like Juneau and all these places in Alaska. And I mean, I'll never forget waking up, looking out the window there on my balcony, just fog and just mystery and suspense. And I thought, holy cow, John Pilot's going to have to take a cruise one of these days. And then I reminded myself, no, he's retired. But
time to come out of retirement.
I think you're right. Well, then we went, just for fun, we went just on a Bahamian cruise last summer and had a great time there. It was a different cruise line. It wasn't as fun, in my opinion. It wasn't bad, but I think the Caribbean cruises and the Alaskan cruises are a different vibe altogether. But
Yes.
But I'm getting in the weeds here. But the point being, I think writers, if you have the wherewithal and you can get away, even if you're just you can afford a getaway just to go on a weekend 100 miles from town. Find a quaint little town or something. I just find these changes of scene just fire the neurons for me. And all I can do then is like just furiously take mental and physical notes about the place because someday I'm going to use that. So I don't know. I just love that we have that in common, shamelessly we'll steal from the setting of our vacation, That's why Key West, that's why John Pilot's in Key West half the time. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And all my vacations are working vacations. I don't think I've actually taken a true vacation, but I try to make them only fiction writing. And so I went on both those cruises. I went on the first cruise. I actually wrote this story much faster than most because I started it on the first day of that January cruise. And I largely finished it at the end of the more recent cruise. And so, everybody else is like going on excursions. And I'm like, I'll be in the such and such lounge working on my book.
Wait a minute. Okay, wait. You say you actually were writing on the cruise? I mean, I'm just taking notes and stuff. I'm not writing.
Oh no, I'm writing.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that is where we diverge because I am too lazy to do that on the cruise. I'll write notes, so that's about it. But oh my gosh, that's fascinating. Well, So was there anything about just the overall Substack experience that just totally shocked you, about whether it be just how smoothly it went, or things that people said, or just relationships and stuff, anything about it that was like, I did not expect this to happen, or maybe not?
Well, I did, and this person, if she's listening, is going to get a swelled head because I've said so many nice things to her, to so many people. But I did have one person who signed up for the annual amount.
Yeah.
And while this was very early on, and while this was going on, I was continuing to update my about information to try to make it clearer and clearer that this was not the bargain option. And then I was doing a Substack Live, and I was talking about this issue, and I saw that she was on there, and she wrote a comment that said, I didn't actually realize that when I signed up, but I'm enjoying it so much, I'm going to stick with it. And her comments were so thoughtful and extensive.
Yeah.
And called out things. I kind of equate it to like the first time you hear a professional audiobook narrator narrate one of your stories, and you notice things that you never really noticed consciously before. And she would say like, oh, I think it's so clever how you tied in this theme in chapter 2 into chapter 11. I was like, I did? That's great. But that was great. The fact that that a couple of people were willing to invest so much time in very careful reading and very thoughtful notes just blew me away. And the fact that some of those people were people who were not familiar with the series, who are completely new to it. So I was pleasantly surprised at the interest I got from people who weren't familiar with the series from the previous books. But I was disappointed in the fact that more of my current followers did not sign up for the subscription. And I'm still thinking about that as I'm preparing for my second serialization. And I think it's a combination of the fact that although I try to be very clear that you did not have to be on Substack to participate, I think that message could have been clearer. And I also just think there are probably steps I could take. So here's a good example. Here's the downside of jumping into something like this before you completely understand the platform. So there are things called notes on Substack.
Yeah.
So the way I usually use notes is I publish the transcripts of my podcast on Substack as a paid benefit.
Right.
And what I'll do is I'll clip out a quote from the transcript, and then I'll restack it so it shows up in one of those little text note thingies on the feed. And then if people click, it would take them to the source of that quote. I didn't even know about notes until like the last day of the serialization. So I thought I could have been making so much headway with clipping out little interesting parts to lead people to it. I think that there's more. I think that there's clearer communication I can make to my current followers. And I think that there's more benefit I can make to capitalizing on the tools that Substack offers for discoverability.
So you're saying, more brand new readers subscribed than converted from your existing list is
yes.
That's that. But that's great too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a lose. It's not a win-lose. It's a win-win either way, really.
Yeah.
And I, like I said earlier, I jokingly about being a small man, but here I go again. I want to double my subscribers before the end of the year at least. Let me ask you this though: was the book absolutely finished? You know what I'm saying? It's like you present it as you can read it and you can comment on it, but I'm not going to change anything. This is the finished work.
Well, I had to hit a balance between it. This is finished, so I'm not going to be able to act on things like I think this other person should be the killer.
Right. Because you did say
no.
that. Right.
But I did act on things like, here's a really good example. One of the things that was very valuable to me is that I am always struggling, as I think any series writer does, about after the first book, how do you provide enough backstory for people who are new to the series and jumping in the middle? And how do you not bore the people who are coming right from the previous book?
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate that I had subscribers who were in both those camps, people who are familiar with the series and not familiar with the series. And so in the early chapters, I was very explicitly saying, like, let me know if you feel like this is too much or not enough. And so I did make some tweaks, normally just like adding a sentence or two
Yeah.
or maybe removing a sentence or two, like very minor, but they were definitely tied to what the subscribers were saying. There was also one chapter that it was funny. I'd kind of forgotten about this. So I was working through, like, I'd get to the next chapter. I'd read through it that morning. I'd make my final round of edits and I'd post it. And then I got to this one chapter and it was like, Anne and Joe do stuff. And I was like, I forgot that I'd left that like that, because the scene wasn't really tied to anything else in the story. It was a standalone scene that was just intended for people who were new to the series, one, to illustrate Anne's ability before she gets on the ship. And there's like a long period of time before you see that skill put to work again.
Right.
And also to illustrate a relationship she has with another character. And so I had come up with, a fairly brief chapter where it was just the two of them and Anne was exercising her skill. And so I said, like, this is the chapter where I'm willing to rip and tear. Like, you let me know, do you think it's useful? Do you think it's not useful? Were you bored? Whatever. I'm trying to think. Fortunately, most of the changes, even though I was soliciting input throughout, it was either very specific input, like, I'm really curious to know, like, who do you think done it at this point? Which is great. There is nothing more fun than writing a mystery and finding out in chapter 13 who different people think the bad guy is.
I love it.
And so I did make some tweaks. Like, someone might say, I think it's this person. It couldn't be this person. And I'm like, that's not exactly the response I want at that point. So I would go back and make changes. So I was definitely not making wholesale changes, but I was definitely soliciting input that would feed the final work.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So there were still tweaks being made. There were still some adjustments that if you saw that you thought were valid and useful. Yeah. Matty. Okay. And I'm going to put all this in the show notes, folks. Do not get off the treadmill. Do not pull over the car. mgopod.com. You'll find it all there. But just go ahead and tell us, Matty, where can they find the Substack? Where can they find your webpage and anything else you want them to find? And of course, where can they buy the book?
Yes. Well, they can, if you go to Substack and search for Matty Dalrymple, and that's Matty with a Y, Matty, you'll find all my publications. I have one for this serialization, which is called At Sea. This is something I would not do again. I would just name the book like Anne Kinnear Book 6, 7 Serialization or whatever, because I spent the whole time explaining to people that the book was not going to be called At Sea. The book, the final book, which launched today, August 15th, is called Something Rich and Strange. It is a Shakespeare quote. All my Anne Kinnear novels are based on Shakespeare quotes. And I was very sad that I had used Sea of Troubles already for a short story. I was like, no, that would have been perfect.
No. I think Something Rich and Strange is fantastic. I love it.
I love it too. And I was talking with a friend of mine, an author friend of mine, and he said, oh, what's the title? And I said, Something Rich and Strange. And he was like, oh, don't do that. Because nobody's going to remember it. I'm like, hey, I'm somebody who named a book A Furnace for Your Foe. Like, I'm not worried about people remembering my book titles. And it's one of those things. I think one of the fun parts about being an indie author is you can think and think and think and say, okay, I know this might not be like hitting all the marketing marks, but I love it so much, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Same here. I indulge myself every night. I'm figuring, I'm putting in the work. I'm going to indulge myself on this particular thing. But folks, look at this. Beautiful. Look at the sea, and the sea will tell. That's not the title, but it's Something Rich and Strange, which I love.
That would have been good.
Yeah. Well,
and if I can just say very quickly, I like this so much that on September 1st, I'm starting the serialization of my 6th and final Lizzie Ballard thriller. And so I would love it if people would come check that out on Substack.
Definitely. Go check that out on Substack. And of course, visit Matty's webpage and you'll see all these wonderful illustrations of all of her books. All the covers are beautiful. But also, hey, I'd be remiss. Tell us also, and I do not at all view this as a competitor. I view this as a dear friend podcast. Tell us about your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have the Indie Author Podcast, INDY, since I like Ys, the Indie Author Podcast. And I am, I think, coming up on or just past 350 episodes. And I have been very fortunate to interview some of the biggest names in the indie author space and the trad space. I originally thought that I would be focusing specifically on indie publishing, but I now feel that any author needs to approach publishing with an indie frame of mind. And so I address topics on all fronts. And as I like to say, we talk about the writing craft and the publishing voyage, because there has never been a concept related to writing or publishing that I couldn't find a nautical metaphor for.
Oh my gosh. See, and I love that. And I'm a big nautical guy too. I love the sea, as I mentioned earlier too. So this book's on my list. It should be on yours as well. Matty Dalrymple, again, let me just say it. I mean every word. You're a pioneer in this business. And you're a progressive voice in the sense of moving the needle forward for indie authors and authors in general. I love that. Yeah, I don't like to make that distinction anymore really too much. On my show, I just interviewed this morning, and I've got another interview in a minute, but I interviewed a guy, W.W. Norton published him. I mean, he's that big deal. New York Times bestseller. That's great. But next week, I'm going to be interviewing a guy with his first book, and it's indie. I just find the whole, the writer's journey, but I find the whole journey we writers take to be fascinating, because we're all taking these different roads down the same path, in which is to what? Be storytellers, to share information, to share experiences, to entertain. I wouldn't go so far as to give up my vacation for it, like Matty, but I would definitely read your books on vacation, though. That's the thing.
Excellent.
Matty Dalrymple, my friend, don't make it 5 years, okay? Come back soon, would you?
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right, folks, mgopod.com for the show notes, this, that, and the other. I'm not going to say anything further other than there's going to be other interviews coming up this season. And, of course, a few solo episodes, too, because this cranky old man's got to rant and rave sometime, doesn't he?
Thanks for joining us on Mysterious Goings On. Be sure to follow Mysterious Goings On wherever you get your podcast and never miss an episode. Don't forget, you can get the links to books and other things mentioned on the show at mgopod.com. Until next time, keep reading.